one thing I wanted to start the show off with, Christy, it was something we were talking a little bit about before the show started, which was hypnotherapy, right?
Yeah. Well, hypnotherapy, and just all of the myths that go with it, right?
Yeah.
Because I mean, any good therapist will tell you that hypnosis is like one of the oldest forms of therapy, and it's not necessarily considered like a therapy unto itself, but it is a incredibly effective strategy in therapy. While at the same time, you have like crazy YouTube videos of people swearing that if you just stare at this spiral for a couple of minutes, you know, your dick will get longer, or your like love of your life will be manifested, or, you know, all of these like crazy extrapolations from that like central idea.
Yeah. So when I grew up, the hypnosis stuff was always just like you put a watch in front of somebody and wave it back and forth, and
Make
then
them
you can
like a chicken.
Command them to do whatever you want, right? Which is interesting. But I had never experienced real, like, quote unquote, real hypnotherapy until, actually, surprisingly enough, when I used to work at a Christian camp. There was this guy, another counselor at this camp, who outside of camp was a truck driver. So I don't know how he picked up these hypnotherapy skills. I think he said he went to some classes. Anyway, he tried to do this hypnosis stuff on these other counselors one night when we were out camping on our weekend retreat. And they were kind of out of it. They had their eyes closed and they were like acting weird. I still don't know. I don't know if they were acting, if there was all just one big bit, or if they were like lulled into some sort of other state, you know?
See, I mean, that's the thing, is it's both. Like when we're talking about like performance hypnosis, like is somebody just acting, or are they being like hypnotized into doing it? And the answer is both, because hypnosis is a choice. Like it's a way of perhaps relaxing you or focusing you on a certain thing.
Yeah.
But ultimately, you're still there. You're still doing the thing, you know?
It's kind of like, it's like speaking in tongues, right? It's like, there may not be like an actual spirit like incorporating somebody's body, but like
there's
that
like flow state to it. Like
there's a performance going on. Yeah, like you're definitely from what I've heard from people, right? There's a mental state that goes on, and I understand, like, as a Christian who used to like do group prayer and stuff, right? Like I feel something in that moment, and I can recognize those feelings are real without recognizing like the supernatural, right? Like there's definitely a distinction. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, hypnosis is not magic. I'm not trying to make any wild claims about what hypnosis can do, but it is a like meaningful tool and an important phenomena. And it wasn't until I started to study it that I felt really comfortable moving from like unpracticing, like distancing himself kind of Christian to like kind of angry atheist activist, because understanding those techniques and that process and recognizing some of the ways I'd been influenced, and that those experiences were not sincere, that I had like a better way of explaining them. That totally moved me from, well, I don't think the God of the Bible is correct, to, oh fuck, now I see what they did.
Right. Yeah. So what is like, you know, what is it really, right? Like when people say they're hypnotherapists, what are they talking about?
Yeah, well, I mean, hypnosis is really just the study, the manipulation, the perhaps like exercises surrounding focus. That's all it is. It completely comes down to focus. If you are watching a watch swing back and forth, or whatever else you're doing, what you are doing is giving yourself permission to not be distracted by outside influences or senses or outside thoughts. And it can empower you to perhaps let your guard down, to perhaps let down some of your resistance. Now, that doesn't mean that like you have no defenses and a hypnotherapist can just like reach into your brain and pluck things out. It just means that you're not maybe resisting the conversation or resisting the ideas being presented in the ways that you might otherwise.
So it's almost like, it's like an induced meditation session.
Absolutely. I mean, the distinction between like mindfulness or meditation and hypnosis is very thin.
Mm,
In fact, like one of my favorite researchers or writers on hypnotism is Michael Yapko, who is kind of like wrote the book. Like his book, Trance Work, is probably the number one textbook on introductory hypnotherapy. And he has a book comparing like mindfulness and meditation with hypnosis side by side. And you recognize it really is a lot of the same techniques and ideas, just with a slightly different tradition behind it, maybe slightly different verbiage, but they're kind of the same notion.
yeah, yeah. You can see how when you're talking about something like this, you can get into new age territory
Right.
very, very fast, right? Like when I think about like the hypno stuff I've seen, it's usually it's like the YouTube video, like nowadays, right? We're talk about first when I was a kid, it was like, the watch thing, right? Nowadays there is a whole market on YouTube of like videos that you can watch of supposed to get you into certain states or like frequencies you can allegedly listen to that will
Sure.
change your body in different ways and a porn genre as well, which
Yeah.
we want to talk about.
Right. No, we were talking about that on the show last night.
Yeah,
There
yeah,
is all of this porn that can allegedly like force you into becoming addicted through the power of hypnosis. And I think it's fascinating to ask like, why does this exist? Like, there's
yeah,
obviously some desire to feel like your relationship with porn is out of your control. Like, I
yeah,
can't help it. I've been hypnotized. I must obey. And
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, that goes a long way towards justifying your decision to spend the day watching porn, which I don't know that you should need to justify. I mean, if you've got other responsibilities, like fair, if I were to spend the whole day watching football when I told my partner I was going to clean the house,
yeah, yeah.
it'd be nice to be able to say, well, I had no choice but to watch football. Like I
I
was hypnotized into
was
doing it.
hypnotized. John Madden lulled me into watching the sport. Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know.
exactly. And so I get the temptation there, but you're right. Like we've gotten a very long ways away from what hypnosis can actually do when we're convincing ourselves that a bunch of like binaural beats or some of this other stuff can create like an addiction relationship with a video. Like that's just not how any of this works.
Yeah, I'm wondering just how many bogus therapy places in the city of Austin alone like use hypnotherapy. At least when I say bogus, right? What I mean is like make claims that it can do things that it can't actually do,
Sure.
right? Because
Well,
like, yeah,
I mean, I'll tell you what, in the realm of psychology, and I'm one of the first people to come out and say that I love what I do. I'm
mhm,
very proud of the education that I got in order to get here. But I will clearly say that I know so many terrible therapists.
yeah,
And
sure,
therapy is a burgeoning field that is full of charlatans, full of bullshit.
yeah,
But honestly, most therapists are kind of terrified of hypnosis just because it does have such a bad rap within the general population. They'd
yeah.
be much more willing to sell you some sort of pseudoscience like enneagrams or, I mean, any number of other dumb things.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, listen, I'm partial to the Enneagram. I like only because there's we haven't talked about this too much on this show, but like there is a very weird Venn diagram between Enneagram and progressive Christianity.
Oh, I
And
know. That's what makes it
it's
so interesting to me is
that's
the way the church has globbed
how
onto it.
weird is that, right? I think it's because there's these claims about the Enneagram being rooted in Jewish mysticism. Have you heard about this?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
it's like
yeah.
vaguely Kabbalic, and I
Yeah,
mean, I guess you can tie it back to Jung, and Jung is like the Rasputin of psychology. We love to tell
it,
made up stories about his magical
isn't that true?
powers.
Yeah, but like from what I understand, there's like no evidence of the Enneagram like before like the 20th century or something. I don't know. It's
Oh
very
yeah, no,
bizarre.
it's
It's
totally based on Jungian archetypes
yeah,
and
yeah.
like loosely based well after the fact.
Yeah, yeah. Very strange stuff. But yeah, there is, this is something important to talk about though, because like there's going to be breakthroughs in science, in the science of mental health, in the science of psychology that are going to probably be strange and they're going to be like something that we may resist at first,
Sure.
right? Like, oh, we'll talk about like SSRIs, for example, right? Like a lot of people still today are very against SSRIs, what they can do. There's still a lot of stuff that we don't know about it. But this idea that, oh, this drug that can alter your mood that you just take, like that's if you tell that to a medieval peasant, I don't know, that's kind of crazy, right? Like you can just kind of get that from your doctor. So what are some tools that you've personally figured out, Christy, between figuring out what's real and what isn't, especially in like burgeoning fields like the ones that you work in?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. Like, you can't know what will eventually become validated.
Yeah.
I guess if we're gonna put this out on the internet, I'll go ahead and call my shot. I am not telling the world that somatic experiencing and that type of like shivering and shaking somatic healing or shamanic healing is real.
Okay.
I am going to say that 10 years from now, I think maybe it really will turn out to have been real.
Okay.
So not endorsing it now, not putting my name on it. I think the research is too weak and isn't there yet, but I'm super fascinated by what we've seen early on.
Okay.
I'm also super curious about the research we're doing with psychedelics and the early returns there.
Sure.
We're not there yet, not making any big claims, but I think that 10 years from now, things like magic mushrooms in the therapy office are going to be much more common.
Interesting. Okay. So really it's just kind of like whenever other people say it is, right? Like, I don't know. That's kind of how it is, right? Because it's like, I'm not doing any original research, right? Any quote unquote research I'm doing is most of the time it's a web search, maybe a book if I've got time, but even one person's book, I mean, that's not enough to say whether something is definitively true or not in a lot of scientific fields. I mean, so yeah, I guess it's kind of like, well, I mean, people are looking for new ways to kind of help themselves in different ways, and people are going to try some of this experimental stuff. I mean, do you have hard limits when it comes to this stuff, or what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, so there's a huge difference between my curiosity and like what I would ever actually sit down and do with a client.
Yeah.
And I'll definitely kind of borrow things from burgeoning or developing fields that I can work into like an already existing framework while being, kind of mindful not to extend it beyond that. But you're right. Like, that word research, I think, is really tricky because, for instance, I have recently been seeking certification and like gaining more education in a particular form of mindfulness.
Yeah.
And I spent hours and hours and hours reading books about it, going to trainings about it, but then also trying to like red team it, going online and what are the criticisms of this particular belief system or this particular strategy? What's the counter research say? What does the research that we have on it say? And I'm skimming, abstracts of different papers. I'm getting into some papers a little bit to kind of see the validity of some of these like meta-analysis, but that's not research that I'm generating. I'm just reading somebody else's homework and trusting that they've done a good job, but also verifying to what I feel is sufficient, which hopefully is rigorous. But I'm a clinician, not a scientist.
Yeah, I think this touches on one of the biggest problems, in my opinion, of the 21st century. I think that we found ourselves, right? The veracity of information that we find, right? Like I can say for myself, I didn't really know how to read news, like read a news article and truly digest it until I took media studies courses in college, right? Like it was only after that when I even had just a modicum of understanding of how that industry even works. And even then, I can only say that I'm a real lay person, right? Like I don't work in journalism. I don't work in news. I don't have a complete picture that somebody does. And imagine people who have even less education than that, right? Who are now coming to the internet and are finding all of these crazy new things that are going around. I mean, like this is like the big issue of our times, isn't it? Just figuring out what's real and what isn't. How do we get good methods to figure out if this new practice is legit or if this is just another way for people to make money off of people who are struggling? Like, I don't know. It's some crazy times we're living in, huh?
Oh, no question. And I think it all comes down to humility. That willingness to acknowledge what we don't know and what we aren't experts in. Just because an expert says it's true doesn't mean it is true, but it goes a hell of a lot further towards providing evidence than you just babbling about what you read on the toilet. And
Yeah.
that distinction is, man, it's shown up in this country in the last 5 years, no question.
It really has. It really has.